from Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. He tweeted this out today. I have never seen both sides of an election this confident. One of them is very wrong. Both sides are in their own bubble and don't realize there is a reality outside of those bubbles. So whoever loses is going to be absolutely shocked. Kamala Harris was losing in 6 out of the last 7 polls in Michigan, but now she's up by 4 in that state in the last poll. This thing keeps swinging back and forth. I've never seen it so unpredictable. You know, I'll be nice because I think he's on the right track, but Cenk Uygur, I don't think he has a mind for this space. It is true that no one knows what's going to happen, but Trump supporters absolutely are not sitting here screaming, we've got this one in the bag. In fact, despite the polls and Polymarket and everything favoring Trump, they're screaming, everyone get out and vote, get everyone to vote because there's going to be some shenanigans. We've got to swamp the vote. There is still fear within Republicans they're going to lose. And despite the fact that Polymarket has Trump at right now 61.7 and Kamala Harris is 38.5, Real Clear Politics has Trump winning every single battleground state and all battleground states in aggregate. Democrats are still saying, we're going to win, we're going to win. And it may not be because they're deluded. It's because they have to say it. They can't drop the morale of their voter base by saying there's no point, don't even bother. So certainly there are elements of both sides that are confident. But I think what we're seeing here with the polls, Polymarket, is the general view of the public is that Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to win and win bigly, but no one knows for sure. I think it's fair to say if Democrats are claiming they're going to win, it is because they are intentionally ignoring the reality of this. So to say it's both sides and it's swinging back and forth and nobody knows is totally wrong, but at least somewhat on the right track.
You know, I heard about Cenk Uygur. I heard he was literally Hitler.
I heard that too.
Isn't that crazy?
You just heard it just
from him. Let me
Yeah.
show you a source.
Report on it.
Yeah, a source close to YouTube told me that he was literal Hitler. And
So is his nephew as
you
well.
have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Take a look at this from the battlegrounds. Trump is up 0.9. So he says, like, what did he say? Michigan? He says Kamala was down in the polls in Michigan. Okay, well, in Michigan right now, Trump is up 0.2 in aggregate. And if we jump in, he is correct that Quinnipiac has +4 for Kamala Harris. But around the exact same time frame, Trafalgar has Trump up 2. These polls are largely meaningless. It's fair to say no one knows for sure. Hence, Republicans are screaming, get as many people to vote as possible. But what happens?
Well, my thoughts are I've been studying imperial strategy a lot lately. 1947 is when the British Empire technically ended. After World War II, they basically turned it into the liberal economic order. They're like, we're done with this, like, having an emperor guy control it. We're just going to make a liberal economic order controlled by the CIA and MI6. So, like, I was studying
CIA didn't exist in 1947.
Well, 1949 is when they officially launched it, but it was around, it had a different name, like, since the 30s or something. 1975, there's the Australian coup. I don't know if you guys have really ever studied this, but they appointed a governor general to overthrow this Australian prime minister that was Go was his name, and he wanted to get out of Vietnam and take away Pine Gap from American sovereignty. He's like Australia first, and they're like, no, that can't happen. Empire must succeed. So the CIA got this governor general, got the king to like appoint him, and like it's basically like late stage Roman Republic where the Praetorian Guard's in control of the emperor, and if the emperor crosses them, he's done for.
Are you suggesting that polls and predictions are meaningless because the deep state will put Kamala in?
Yes. And I think that they like closeness because it makes good media attention to think it's within 2. But
it makes Republicans think we have a fighting chance if we keep pushing.
And the CIA is controlling the game. And I think that it's stacked against us. I mean, I still think go out and vote because Donald Trump did win in 2016, but they didn't feel threatened against him in 2016, whoever they are. This strategy, this imperial strategy.
It'd be really funny.
Bureaucrats.
If it would be really funny if that Trump was supposed to win on the merits, but the Democrats, the deep state was cheating to install Hillary, but then the Russians pressed the button turning off their computer so that Trump actually won on the merits. And then they were like, oh, crap, it was the Russians, but the Russians actually didn't cheat to help Trump. You know what I mean? Like a multi-layered conspiracy of conflicting intelligence agencies from Russia to the U.S.
We need to stop them from cheating. And they're like, they're stopping us.
Exactly. Because of Russia, we lost, but we were cheating. I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying, wouldn't it be funny if what actually happened is that Trump did win, but Democrats were going to press a button to flip the votes to support Hillary, but then the Russians flipped a button to flip their votes back. So Trump ended up winning normally. And then they were like, how did we not win?
The riggers. It's rigged.
It does feel like we're part of like a pre-planned thing. But Trump winning in 2016 gave me, outside of that perspective. I was pretty, and I consider this a form of being black-pilled, being like, look, the CIA runs the show. It always has. Kennedy got offed. You know, they overthrew the prime minister in Australia in 1975. He wasn't serving the king or whatever, whoever's running the show, MI6. I don't know, man. I think Trump does represent American sovereignty in the sense he kind of gives like business first, local economics first, and that there's like a global governance scheme that's kind of like trying to position and control the world through economics and military force if they have to. And Trump's kind of like indicates it's in the way.
Control the world through economics. What do you?
Well, they want this liberal economic dollar.
What is your concern about that?
The vulnerability of fiat currency, that if they can print as much as they want and bribe people, like bribe countries and buy them.
So I mean, I understand that the goal for a lot of countries or for the United States is to have people use the dollar, and because that props up the dollar and allows them to, overspend and stuff like that. Do you believe that is for nefarious intent, and if you do, why?
Yeah, the U.S. aid. It's basically the central cortex of the empire. It's called U.S. aid. I don't know. Doesn't mean aid. You guys familiar with it off the top of your heads? It's international development. It's the Agency for International Development. U.S. Agency for International Development. It controls like the Department of Defense, the CIA, and it's like the center go through for all these agencies. It's not really supposed to have a center go through. They're supposed to be independent. So the U.S. aid got created, and its kind of job is to go create. Mike Benz knows this stuff real well, and I think he's coming on the show pretty soon. We can go deep on U.S. aid. Is to create value outside of the U.S. And what they'll do is they'll buy countries. They'll basically flood their markets with U.S. dollars through bribery, and then take control of their economies. And that's kind of been the
when
tactic.
You say take control, what do you mean by take control?
They make sure that they're on their currency.
So using the dollar.
Yeah.
But do you mean when you say take control, it implies like there's the U.S. trying to direct their economy? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if it's the U.S., but it's whoever's controlling the monetary.
USAID, right?
USAID is the organization that's running it.
Right. And it goes through the IMF, the World Bank, et cetera. They use SWIFT payment.
Yeah, the Bank for International Settlement.
Can you steel man the existence of the USAID?
USAID is a real thing. It exists.
Yeah,
and they
go ahead.
They provide money and resources on the surface to foreign countries, and many accuse them of actually being a subversive force that, for instance, in Ukraine, there are a lot of people that claim USAID was actually the structure by which they implemented the overthrowing of the Yanukovych government to create a more pro-Western government. Mm-hmm. So the structure this is basically the Confessions of the Economic Hitman. You're familiar with that book?
No, actually, I'm not.
In order for the liberal economic order to maintain control, they first go and say, "Hey, you've got a developing nation. We want you to do what we want, and we're going to give you tons of money. You're going to get a big old stack of U.S. dollars. We're going to build roads, McDonald's, grocery stores. You're going to be a developed nation." And if they say no, they say, "Okay, if you don't do it, you get the stick. Carrot or the stick? What do you pick?" And if they refuse the carrot, then they'll try to remove them through a coup of some sort.
Okay.
If the coups fail, then you get a Saddam Hussein or a Gaddafi type scenario.
Okay.
That's the claim made. It's the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Yeah.
What is true, however, is that, the IMF offers loans to developing nations.
Yeah.
And the simplest version of it, I would argue the non-conspiratorial or steelman argument of the IMF is it's a bank that give out loans to developing countries because they believe if we develop in this nation and build businesses, we'll get labor back in kind and it'll pay back the loan. But what ends up happening is most of these countries develop massive debt to an international bank they can't pay back, and then just become indentured servant vassal states to an international structured, whatever you want to call it. And then when you cross the line, they'll kick you out of the SWIFT payment system, so your credit cards don't work no more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The point that I was trying to get is like Ian is oftentimes you're talking about these things without actually fleshing out the argument you make, and you imply a lot of nefarious things, but I've never really heard you articulate what it is that you find so objectionable. Like the other night when you were talking about the emperor, you're like, well, it's not supposed to be. And it's like, well, why not?
Yeah, this is a good question, Ian. What is objectionable about a method of control by which you offer resources and then put someone in debt?
Well, I mean, if it was at their will, if it wasn't like you were saying earlier about this hitman strategy, like we're going to control your nation one way or another, and you get to pick. Do you want to be bribed out and just be a served to us, like, and pay us back for the rest of your life and owe us interest on all our loans to you? Or do you want us to remove you and then take control of your country? Or do you want us to invade and take it by force? It's your choice. That's my problem with it, is this strategy. If it was just like, hey, do you want some money? You'll end up paying us back in the long run. If not, okay, that's fine. Do your thing. But that'd be a different story.
If it's a developing nation, like, right, that doesn't have a lot of economic activity, right, and they're giving loans to these countries so that way they can develop they can have a functioning economy or have a more prosperous economy, and it helps the people of the country. Why is that bad?
Well, I mean, helps it. If it helps the people of the country, it does a lot of times lift people out of poverty. That's true.
I think my point being, like, the argument that you're making sounds like an argument against capitalism, right? Against the method that we use to fund projects, and that kind of boils down to an argument against capitalism. And capitalism is the best system to raise people out of poverty. The reason we don't have a total poverty be the norm globally, and it's not. We've got, like, I think less than 10% of the population is in abject poverty anymore. I think the UN said, and by like 2035, you're going to get rid of all objective poverty, which is like living on less than $1 a day. Different amounts of money are necessary in different countries to keep people fed and stuff. But capitalism is the engine that has raised the standard of living for people globally forever. Even China, like, China was a basket case of an economy until the 70s or something like that, when Nixon went and opened it up a little bit. China decided to open up markets, and then they started to actually produce something for the people. People stopped starving all the time. So, like, the argument sounds like when you talk about it, it sounds like you're against, the liberal economic order. It's like, liberalism is generally good, right? And the economic order that has been produced has raised a massive amount of people, billions of people, out of poverty. So I'm not sure what your argument against it is, when it's actually done really great things for billions of human beings.
Well, one would be the centralization of control. That makes me nervous, because if crazy people get in control of that system, if there's one system and everybody relies on this one economic order, if crazy people get in there and, like, we don't like this type of person and we don't like that kind of culture, you're like, whoa, hold on, this is Earth. We're all in this together. It's not your 80 people's decision of who gets to go poor and who gets to live. And that's one concern, is centralization of control. Another one is, like, look what they did in Libya. Libya was an example of Gaddafi wanting to get off the US dollar, and I think he wanted to adopt the gold standard, and they were like, that's not going to fly, bro. And they just basically killed the man and took the country by force.
He wanted an African Union, and he wanted to trade oil and gold, and that's against the wishes of the Western powers. So they take him out. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.